Omi tutu, ele tutu, ona tutu, tutu eshu, tutu egun, tutu eshu, tutu bobo Orisha. Kosi ku, kosi ejo, kosi efo, kosi edina, kosi akoba, kosi fatibu, kosi wahala. Aiko baba wa. La guana, the coco, the beer, manico, sherry, obariki, oko, like balore, calore, go to Tiona, Kamo, loco, for Tanicana tail, Aiko baba wa. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Oshe, Tora, Shitora, Shitora, Ashe, ashe, ashe. I give thanks and praise to all the Orishas. I give thanks and praise to all the Yoruba forces. I give thanks and praise to Obatala. I give thanks and praise to Yemoja. I give thanks and praise to Oshun. Give thanks and praise to Oya. I give thanks and praise to Veji. Give thanks and praise to Nana Olokun. Give thanks and praise to Onile. Give thanks and praise to Rumala. Give thanks and praise to Gungun. Give thanks and praise to Iamio Soronga. Give thanks and praise to Ajay. Give thanks and praise to Olokun. Give thanks and praise to all mentioned, all not mentioned. Give thanks and praise to all the spirits, all the Orishas, all the Yoruba pantheon. Give thanks and praise to the Kemetic pantheon. Ibashe, Ibashe Amunra, Ibashe Olu, Ibashe Oser, Ibashe Oset, Ibashe Stabek, Ibashe Apuat, Ibashe Mentu, Ibashe, all spiritual forces, all forces mentioned, all those that are not mentioned. We give thanks and praise to the angelic forces. We give thanks and praise to the saints. We give thanks and praise to all those beings that are extraterrestrial. We give thanks and praise to all the forces in the universe that has come to assist in this process. We say Ashe. Greetings to my sisters and brothers. Let me make sure that I get centered. Cool. That's what I'm talking about. This is your brother Khepra Ptah, the Grand Solarizer. I want to talk a little bit about Orishas. I want to talk about spirituality. I want to talk about the universal aspect of spirituality as well. Unfortunately, we can only talk about so much at a time, but at the same time, go ahead and process as much as you can. Take notes, because we about to go in, family. So, a lot of us were raised when it comes to Abrahamic traditions. We learned about Christianity, we learned about Islam, we learned about Judaism. However, these particular religions, unfortunately, often came with dogma. And because they came with dogmas, they constantly limited our perception of what spirituality is. So, some say that there are secret teachings within Christianity. Others believe that it simply are the remains of lost knowledge that has enwrapped itself in today's religions, yet working as the mystical path of achieving enlightenment. Now, our brother Bobby, the way he looked at it is that the God is within you, so we're here to awaken that God. Each and every one of us are the living image of God, and it is our job to be that vehicle so that spirit can express itself through. And this is where the alchemy comes into play, because you're here to spiritualize matter. So when it comes to traditions that deal with Orishas, with Loas, with angels, with saints, each and every one of these beings are not only around us, but they're also within us, because you're part of a holographic universe where every part contains the whole. So when we look at the universe, we see that the universe, universal, or you and I verse, or the one song, the one phrase, it's dealing with sound vibrations, images. Everything around you is light slowed down. The logos is the sacred word in which brings into being all existence. It is the divine spark of reason, working as the guiding principle behind being itself. So in the mystical understandings of the Christ, manifested as the second person of the Trinity, It is the shaping principle taking place throughout the universe. Now, it's not to be taken literal, okay? But we understand how the universe operates in threes. You have past, present, and future. You have left, right, then you have the center. You have the masculine principle, the feminine principle, and then you have that which comes forth, which is the child. So all these things working in harmony, even when it comes to an atom, you got the electron, the proton, the neutron, and so forth. And the beautiful thing is that you're looking at how this force, this invisible force, holds the whole universe together. Your atoms, right? Between every atom is empty space, even though you're held together with 14,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. So it is the shaping principle taking place in the universe, in which is the cosmic intelligence that works within us, in which we are the vehicles and vessels of. So it's about getting beyond the personality. When we look at the word persona, it means mask and it also means through sound. When you look at the ancient traditions, it talks about reciting mantras over and over again, because what you're doing when you're reciting these mantras or you're calling on these God names is you're activating faculties within yourself. When you look at the word persona, it means through sound. So you can literally transform and shape your personality through sound and understanding that the personality is not really who and what you are. The personality can be divided when you go through traumatic events. So I don't know if you're familiar with the story Sybil, but it's a story about a woman who had been through so much trauma that she literally had her personality broken up into 16 fragments. So she literally had 16 personalities. So the person is not really you. Okay, it is the expression of you. And as you have gone through life, you have taken on these different personas, these personalities, and you're also connecting with the various deities expressing themselves through you and understanding how to get these deities to work with you, as opposed to demonic forces or subconscious blocks working against you. So gnosis is about the idea of realization, knowledge, and it comes from ancient Kemet and interpreted to mean a few different things. Gnosis is a state of knowing what is beyond the senses. So Brother Bobby was constantly telling you that you got to look within. He would give you a lot of books to read because he understood that the awakening process is within each and every one of us as melanated people. However, we have learned that we have to have somebody over us all the time. So we look for validation when we actually have the power to make these things work. Another problem is that a lot of times we try to save everybody, and you're not going to save billions of people. However, you may become an influencing factor in the world, but it's when you wake yourself up, you lead by example. And for those who are ready to receive this information, this is when you're able to shine. But you cannot force anybody to wake up. It is their time. When it's their time to wake up, they will wake up. In the meantime, you work on yourself and you operate the divine presence within you. Then you awaken the God within. That's the Asar, in which was talked about in the Kemetic tradition. That's the bringing back the pieces that were scattered. There's a story in the Yoruba that talks about how there was Obatala, and then there was a being that literally caused a boulder to roll down the hill and smashed Obatala in the form of Orisha into pieces, right? And these pieces became scattered. It's the same story of Asar in that regard. Each and every one of us are Asar. We're Osiris. We're Obatala in that sense, okay? In the Yoruba tradition, it talks about connecting with Ejiope, which is the supporter. It is the divine state in which we are aligned with our destiny. And your spiritual energies are working in harmony, because when there's an alignment within yourself, there's no internal resistance, because you're not adhering to the blockages and also the traumas that exist within your psyche, causing it to be fragmented. Part of your journey is to bring these pieces back together and to remember, meaning to bring your scattered members back together. So in Asar, it's the story of Asar. It talks about how his body was broken up into 14 pieces by Set and scattered throughout the land. And every body part, there was a shrine erected. So if you look at this in a certain way, you come to the conclusion that these different fragments of Asar can represent the different religions, philosophies, and all these things that appear to be separate. Your job is to take all these fragmented aspects of yourself and bring it back together and fully awaken. But remember, in order to find yourself, you must first lose yourself. So you started out as part of that which was undefinable, and you risen from out of the noon. In the Kemetic tradition, it talks about coming from out of that which is unmanifested into the manifest realm. You come from the invisible realm. There's no such thing as death. So when you go to the process that appears to be death, you just simply return back to the invisible realm. You go back into the realm of spirit in which all things are possible because there's no differentiation. But when you come into the physical form, then you experience differentiation, right? Now, because everything begins on a subtle plane, there's also your subtle spiritual body. A lot of times, you may have what is called deja vu. Why? Because you are a time traveler. Let me explain. The medical terminology for deja vu is the epilepsy of the temporal lobe. That's their way to explain it away. But sometimes when you're going through an episode of deja vu, you will find that you can actually slightly predict what is going to happen next in various times. Or you may just say, hey, the phone is about to ring, and the phone rings, and you're basically telling yourself that, hey, you know who's calling? It could be your auntie. It could be a friend that you haven't heard from in a long time, but you may get the inclination that this person is going to call you and they end up calling you. How many of you have had that happen? This happens to people all the time. This is because spirit is not limited to time and space. You have chose to go through the process of appearing to be limited to time and space, but your spirit is not limited to time and space. However, by allowing yourself to take on limitations, you can define yourself and come up with the story of your life. So, the Gnostic tradition is not necessarily any one particular religion, though many are satisfied with the notion that Gnosticism comes from the Judeo Christian faith. However, one of the main teachings of Gnosticism is that the God that we have come to worship is not actually the true God, but a lesser being who thinks it is the true God. Now, one of the main teachings of Gnosticism was and is that matter itself is a prison. Now, you go to the philosopher known as Plato, who was initiated in the Comitian teachings, understood that each individual have their natural blessings and access to their own divine spark of reason. Unfortunately, we have been in a prison to our five senses and our desires. So there's also the metaphor of the cave, of the people that keep on staring, they keep on looking forward at the shadows, right? Moving on the wall. But they will not look beyond that. They will not get up and or turn around and go and see what's coming, where the light is coming from, causing the shadows to be reflected. They're just looking at the shadows on the wall, kind of like the Matrix. A lot of times we get caught up in seeing what is in front of us, right? We only deal with what we can pick up with our five senses. If you want to become divine or tap into that divinity and express that creativity, you have to go beyond the senses. And a lot of times, that very creative spark of yours comes from beyond the senses. One case scenario that many people may have also experienced is when you're sleeping and you're waking up in the early part of the morning and you're seeing that you're being downloaded with information. Here's what you do: do not move for a minute. Let the information download into you. Have something to write with and immediately start writing. Because the minute you start moving around, what's going to happen is that you're going to start losing this information. Okay? It's going to go back into your subconscious and you'll blow yourself away because you'll discover something. A lot of this information that you're downloaded with checks out. For instance, I remember when I was in the between sleeping and waking state, and I was much younger than I am now. And this is before I knew anything about the internet. I was told about algorithms. So later on, I started hearing about algorithms, and it checked out. Another thing is that sometimes it'll explain to you about events that's going to take place in your life, or sometimes it'll even explain to you. I'm talking about the higher self because you're tapping into the Akashic realm in your sleeping state, between your sleeping and wake state. This is the same thing that Edgar Casey was doing. This is what Nikola Tesla was doing. They were tapping into that unseen Akashic field of possibility because the highest aspect of you is all knowing. So you have that which is in your DNA, which connects you to the Akashic realm. When you can tap into that, When you can gain mastery of that, you become inventive. So when you become a walking God, a living, true, and breathing God, that is because you're expressing divine will. And this also takes place in the form of your creativity. When you can create, God is also a creator and creatress. So therefore, we awaken that creative aspect within ourselves. And this is how we're able to live our lives and also understand how great we actually are. Now, the ancient Gnostics also understood this world to be an imperfect copy of the luminous one. The world was created by what is called the demiurge. The demiurge is the lesser god who believes himself to be the supreme being. Now, humanity is under control of the tyranny of these so-called entities called archons, right? And these archons take the form of people in high places and so forth, or people who are expressions of this archonic energy. They're the ones who make all these crazy rules. They're the ones that make it difficult for you to live your life by causing you to have to deal with artificial means of survival. So they create this system in which you have to pay bills, and they may cause you to only be able to work so many hours and get paid so much. And then by the time you get your money, right, part of it is already taken before you get a chance to spend it. So the way this system works, right, over here in capitalist America, they've already made sure that you can't make money without them making money. That's the way it works. However, it's also to make sure that your energy is being siphoned to keep the demiurge going and to keep the demiurge alive. You see, you don't need the demiurge needs you because it's a false god. Now, the true and supreme being in which we're all expressions of is beyond the persona. However, it comes into these physical forms to experience the limitations of creation and therefore able to define itself and once again create a story. Every human being is a walking story, so therefore you must know your story and write your own story. The word universe, once again, meaning one song and one phrase. And a phrase is persistent of words. It is said that each and every one of us are manifestations of the living word. You have DNA, right? And basically, DNA consists of codes and patterns, numbers, and everything else, proteins. These are coded. It's part of the language of the universe itself. Your DNA is voice activated. The universe is voice activated. So therefore, you want to be careful of the things in which you say to yourself, because you can actually throw yourself off with negative confirmation or affirmation, should I say. A lot of times we speak negative affirmations to ourselves, even when we're joking. So earlier you heard me call upon the Orishas when I did the libation. For quite some time, I was studying the teachings of Raon Ephraim and the Metal Netter, volume 1 and 2. Now, actually, I got all 7 volumes. However, what I liked about these teachings, he made the connection of the Orishas, the Netaru, the deities of Indus Kush, the Devas, or the Indian deities, and so forth. He showed how they are all connected. Now, I would not say that they're all exactly the same. However, what I will say is that these various deities operate on the same sphere. So you may remember that Brother Bobby would call upon the Orishas, the Netaru, the Apollo deities called the Impungus, the Sephiroth, and the Kabbalah, and he would just go all down the line, right? Because he understood the holographic nature of the universe in which you live in. The thing about it is that we have learned how to make agreements and give our power away, and because we give our power away, we weaken ourselves and we subjugate ourselves to the storms and hurricanes of this existence, knocking us around and causing us to panic. Also, you have to go beyond the physical because you have to place what it is that you want to do. You have to place it within your life force. How? This is when you go into trance, you meditate, you visualize, you chant mantras, and therefore you are connecting this to your life force. Once what you want, what you desire is connected to your life force and awakened within your so-called subconscious, then it can manifest. This is when you do visualizations and also you utilize your imagination and you tap into that heteru slash Oshun factor when you tap into the feeling and the desire in order for it to happen. Oshun slash heteru, deities like that, Chola Wenge. These are all deities that represent the desire to exist. According to the Yoruba tradition, it teaches that Olodumare needed one ingredient to add to creation, and that creation was sweetness. That creation, sweetness, they said, was Oshun. She represents the desire to be itself. So the reason why you're even in existence is because something has to be you. You desire to be, and therefore you are here. And the good news about that is that there will never be a time where there will not be some aspect of you in the universe, because there's the all. Nothing can be taken away from the all. Okay? So you yourself, you're constantly expanding, living various incarnations. And then you come into a point that you may want to transcend this particular reality. You look at the word transcend, it means to end a trance. We are in constant trance states. Emotions are trance states. So when you transcend or you transfer into another plane of existence, you come into another aspect of reality. I'll give you an example. Many of you have shifted, and whether you know this or not, you have shifted realities simply by changing the way you think and the way you see the world. Now, after I went through the initiation into EFA some years ago, I had a pretty interesting experience. And that is, I was laying in a sleeping bag when I first moved in to this particular apartment. I didn't have any furniture or nothing. Next thing you know, I had the desire to get up and have some tea. So I go to the kitchen, I get this tea, or I thought I was getting the tea, and something was off. Next thing you know, I wake up back in the sleeping bag. I'm like, okay. So I get up, I say, hey, you know what? I still got the desire to have some tea because I really wanted that tea. I go back into the kitchen, it happens again. I'm laying back in the sleeping bag. So this happened another 4 or 5 times. The last time I decided I wasn't going to do that. So I went downstairs instead of the kitchen. And you know what? I didn't wake up back in the sleeping bag. I spoke to someone who was a mystic and a shaman about this. And what they had said is that, well, the reason why you were going through this is because there's a part of you that did not want to come back to this reality. Now, I'll say that they were onto something. But what I also say is that you can shift realities. And what I was doing is I was being shown that that's the possibility that each and every one of us can actually manifest by changing the reality in which we live. But it'll be a similar reality. It's kind of like shifting timelines because you live in a multiverse. Therefore, if you die here, you manifest somewhere else. There's really no killing you, brother, sister. There's no killing you, God. You can't kill God. And each and every one of you, my sisters and brothers, are expressions of God. So the rascals who are in power, they have been able to manipulate us through our fears, our beliefs, our desires. They learn how they can separate us by causing conflict, to distract us from our destiny and siphon off of our energy. And because we're incarnated in matter, we have this stress, and it keeps in a state of dissatisfaction and suffering. The incarnated soul has begotten its origin and is now in a soul prison. So the whole thing about it, according to Gnosticism, is when you reach gnosis, then you gain full realization, where you eventually discover that you do not have to be imprisoned by matter. One challenge that also comes with the human condition is us losing recall of our origin and being misaligned with our life's purpose. Now, the Commissions would say, ba inter, meaning that my soul is divine. They also say, ba to heaven, body or kat to earth. So all things arise from the invisible realm called the Nun, which is the undifferentiated sea of nothingness. So your true state is not limited to form. However, you take this form so you can experience life. Therefore, you are a life form. You and all living beings are variations of this one divine being. When you look at the book of Knowing the Creations of Ra, it speaks about how Ra manifests in the form of animals, insects, green things, creeping things. So Ra, which is life force energy, which is solar energy, expresses itself through living entities. You are here to alchemically transform and transmute matter. You raise this frequency and vibration. Therefore, you yourself are here to master your physical body. This is where all the yoga comes in. This is where African dance comes in, martial arts, and so on. So we're at a time now in which this knowledge is being rediscovered. One example is the Nag Hammadi text discovered in 1945. They're so called because they were discovered in Upper Egypt by a man by the name of Muhammad al-Saman, and the content was written in a Coptic language, and it's actually it's the remains of the ancient Egyptian language that we now call Cometian. Also, they would say Kuptik and so forth, or Rami Kemet, or Rani Kemet. So, regardless, more and more discoveries are being made, and the past decades proving that the ancient ones were way more intelligent than we give credit for. So you look at these pyramids, you look at these temples, you see how they align with the stars and the planets, and you come to the conclusion that they were on to something. So you're not going to see this when you look at National Geographics or you look at your history in the schools and so forth, because they're not trying to open your mind. They're trying to put you in a state where you could be trained to work, not think. They don't want a nation of thinkers. They want a nation of workers. So if you know who you are, you basically claim that energy for yourself. You will not allow your energy to be siphoned by those who are in control or those who would like to control you. Then you learn the thing that they don't want you to learn, and that is self-control. Self-control is even superior to self-defense. They don't want you to control yourself. They want you to give your power and control over to others, you see. So you can tap into these various streams of consciousness. When it comes to the African ancestors, the indigenous ancestral ways, and so forth, they knew how to talk to the plants. They knew how to speak with the forces of nature, and they would respond. Like, for instance, the Orishas, those are forces of nature. The Neteru, those are forces of nature. The Loa of the Haitian Vodun tradition, they're ancestral beings that operate also as forces of nature. You always will hear that these beings operate through forces of nature. And then you go back to Kim and you see where the word nature comes from, the Kemetic word netter, which they have translated to mean God. The thing about it is that their idea of God is so skewed that you cannot even line it up with their definition and understanding of God. Okay? The thing about it, when you look at yourself, you look in the mirror and you see the living image of the divine, the creator, creatress, which expresses itself through you. So even in the Latin, they say that the human being is imago vivae, which is mean the living image of the divine, because you are the living being in which the divine expresses itself through. When I dealt with Ifa, asked Ifa, what was our purpose? And Ifa revealed to me that each and every one of us are supposed to become the living vessels of the divine. So you allow your body, your advice, allow yourself to be used by the divine to align with the will of the divine. And when you live your purpose, this is when you will be fulfilled. One of the reasons why a lot of people may have lots of money, they don't feel or they're not fulfilled is because they're not aligned with their life purpose. So you can actually build the ladder on the wrong house. You can climb the ladder of success. You can be successful climbing that ladder. However, you built the ladder or climbed the ladder on the wrong house. Meaning, you may have succeeded in your job, you may be a manager of a company, but there's something missing. And a lot of that is that spiritual urge to connect with your divine purpose. If that is not your purpose, then you will not be fulfilled. You will want to do something else. And a lot of times we give our power away by allowing others to tell us what our purpose is, as opposed to going within. And this is where Ifa divination and the divination systems of the ancient African traditions come from or come in, is because it tells you who you are, why you're here, and what your purpose is, so therefore you can align with it. A lot of times when you go against that purpose, which is the agreement that you made before you came into physical form, you'll find yourself going through all kinds of drama. You'll find yourself being sickly. You'll find yourself unhappy, and things seem to be working against you. Why? Because you're working against your purpose, family. So the true idea of spirituality, it has nothing to do with fleeing from the world. It's going within, which allows you to transcend. You see, when you go within, you become more of yourself. Then you become like the rocket with the booster that can take you up on out of this realm. First, though, you have to understand what it means to be realized and self-realized. It's not about running. It's about going within. When you're down and out, the best place to go is in and up, you see. So if you're not taking it as far as literal when you're studying the scriptures and you're able to look at the symbols and pay attention to the symbols, you'll make a pretty beautiful discovery. And that is, all these world religions and their teachings is all seeing very similar things. And many teachings around the world talks about a divine being that incarnates in a human form, experiences life, it goes through death and resurrection, because it's a story about you in so many ways. Your true self being born and awakened. You go through a physical birth, you go through the process of sickness and everything else, you go through human suffering, and then you go through death, and then you go through resurrection. But then you also go through many deaths and resurrections. The death of your old self, and you being resurrected as a new being. When you say that I'm not going to do these things anymore. Let's say if you was a person who was abusing drugs and you say, okay, I'm no longer going to do this. And you decide to go to rehab. You decide to exercise some type of self-mastery, some type of self-control, and you overcome the chemical addiction, right? Which is a beautiful process. That means that your self as an addict has died, but the new awakened self who is moving towards success, you have resurrected as a new being. Now you can enter the realm of heaven. You understand? A lot of the teachers within the church, even though you discovered a lot of things, were falsehood because of the colonialism that was been added to the teachings, how the Romans got their hands on it and decided that they were going to utilize it to enslave people. There's this idea of being filled with the Holy Spirit. The idea of being filled with the Holy Spirit is to empty yourself of ego and allowing the divine frequency to operate and work through you. So if you're familiar with the concept of like Dragon Ball, where the character Goku, eventually in Dragon Ball Super, he goes through what is called Ultra Instinct, where he does not have to think. He automatically moves out the way when a punch is thrown, and then he automatically strikes at the right point. When your mind no longer interferes with your ability to act, then that means you're in alignment, because a made up mind of yours, your amygdala and everything else, is interfering with your ability to be present, to act, to do things, and be in alignment. I'm gonna give you an example. How many times have you got in an argument with your significant other, and you guys, no matter how much sense you're making, right? They're just not hearing you, and it could be the other way around. Okay, what's going on is that that person, their amygdala has completely taken over. They're on autopilot. They're not listening to what you're saying because they're defending themselves, because for whatever happened, what became this argument was based on some type of trigger. Something that you said or did may have triggered them. And whether you were right or wrong or meant to do it or not, they decided that they were going to go in defense mode. So their amygdala has taken over. They don't hear a word you're saying because they're in a trance. So the best way to deal with that is to wait till they're no longer in that trance state and address the issue in a different way. You see what I mean? But a lot of times, it's not so much that the person that you're having this issue with is a wicked or evil person. It's just that they didn't go into so much pain and traumas in this world that they developed a self defense mechanism. And the self defense mechanism often interprets things in a certain way with its guards up. So, part of the way in which we realize who we are is to put our guards down to hear the truth. I'm not saying allow people to transgress against your boundaries. What I'm saying is that you open up and awaken that part, like the heart. People with closed hearts have a hard time manifesting. They have open minds but closed hearts. The ability to manifest is directly connected to the heart center. Ashe. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we have been manipulated and what we can do about it. Not everybody has always been supportive of this fact, right? There's a little bit of history. It's the second century AD. Irenaeus wrote a huge body of work to refute the teachings of Valentinus, who was teaching you about the Gnostic tradition, right? This is being propagated by Ptolemaeus. Now, the Valentinians, they see themselves as Christian, but they were very mystical, and they were also assertive in reaching out to people and bringing others into their school of thought. Their influence made an impact on the Roman Empire and would be active up into the 4th century AD. Like most forms of Gnosticism, the Valentinians believed that the individual had the ability to gain direct experience with the divine. One of the things that they have taken away from you is they've been telling you all your life that you have to go through somebody else to gain a direct experience with the divine. But that's not a direct experience if you got to go through someone else. You see what I mean? First of all, what is keeping you alive? The breath. Breath comes from the word spiritus, right? Or the Latin word for breath comes from to aspire or aspire, respiration, and so forth. To breathe, spirit means spiritus, which is breath. If you're breathing, then that means that you are practicing spirituality. It's the breath. When somebody asks me, hey, what religion are you? Like my teacher would say, take a deep breath. Ah, you just joined my religion. That's what I'm talking about. You have an innate spirituality. Your spirituality is keeping these religions alive. These religions are not necessarily keeping your spirituality alive. Okay? Now, religion means to realign or become one, but the whole or become one with something that you have drifted off from. So it's to realign you. Here's the thing though. If you have to realign with that which you are, you can look at it in a different light and say, I simply have forgotten and I must remember. So you get into the Kemetic teachings, it's always about bringing the pieces back together and remembering. In the Yoruba, it's the broken pieces of the Obatala, also known as the shattered pieces of the calabash. It talks about the universe being shattered into shards because the Yoruba seeing the universe as one giant calabash. You are also a miniature calabash within a larger calabash. This is touching upon a holographic universe where every part contains a whole. So there's a time when heretics were not treated very nicely for looking at the whole. They were put to death, right? And this is clear in the actions of the one named Theodosius. We see that from the Gnostic concept of Christ, the focus was not necessarily directed towards the historical person, but more or less the state of awareness and an aspect of consciousness. This is what the Christ actually is. Yet they were aware of the universe being intelligent, and that the outer universe was a reflection of our inner universe. And therefore, just as you can communicate with aspects of yourself, you can communicate with the aspects of the universe as well. Therefore, they teach about prayer and reciting mantras and the singing of songs. In the European tradition, you have what is called praise poetry, when you're constantly praying or you're chanting, right? And you're giving praise to the forces of the universe. And the more praise you give to these forces, the stronger they become in your life. So the Gnostics would often call these principles the aeons, and they were considered aspects of time as well as aspects within the universe, aspects of yourself. But they were also considered time periods and faculties that existed within the supreme being, making up what is called the pleroma, which means the fullness of existence. Your job as a human being, which separates you from the animals, is that you have the ability to come into full realization of the fullness of who and what you are. It is the archons that control our world, which puts fear in us and try to disconnect us from the very thing that could set us free, our access to spirit. Therefore, we must explore the constant ideas of the ancients, as well as explore yourself and your own creativity. Because just because the Buddha may have been enlightened in a certain way doesn't mean that's the same way that you're going to find your path to enlightenment. However, the idea of Buddha just simply means awakened one. That's all that means. Christ means the anointed one. These all represent different aspects of the realized individual, and it goes beyond gender. Okay? I've had dreams and visions that showed the idea of a female aspect of Christ as well. Okay, so there's the physical, there's the spiritual, there's the yin and the yang, the sacred masculine, sacred feminine, and they work in harmony in order to keep the dance of the universe flowing. There's what is called the pistis, or pistis and gnosis, right? Pistis is the idea of dealing with faith. Gnosis is the idea of coming to full realization through divine knowledge. Pistis is the Greek concept that began as a goddess of truth and honesty. But under the Christian belief system, pistis became the concept of grace as a gift from God. as opposed to gnosis, the attainment of divine knowledge. So, unfortunately, you see where those who wanted to control and manipulate you have dabbled into the knowledge, and they've rearranged it, repackaged it, and they've given it back to you in a way that's been distorted. When we look at the Christian Bible, it talks about Adam knowing his wife. This is because in order to know, it means to be intimate with something. So to know the truth is to be intimate with the truth. You have to love the truth, make love to it, allow the universe to make love to you, become one with it, and remember that you were never truly separated from it to begin with. However, you are individualized as an aspect of God having a unique experience. At the same time, it brings forth the understanding of the true mystery of having an intimate relationship with oneself. So in the Purdim Haru, the scribe Anui says, Rek Rena, meaning I know my name. And the name is one's identity, and also the sound and the vibrations that we call and summon when we're trying to contact the spirit. In the Kemetic tradition, it is believed that if you lived a life that was honest, a life of honor and righteousness, therefore, you are fit to have your ka called upon to participate in the world and assist those who are also trying to advance in their own spiritual evolution and to bring balance to the community. In ancient Kemet and in ancient African traditions, community, or should I say community, was very important and still is. A lot of festivals involve the collective where everybody comes and partakes in a sacred feast in sacred times and seasons. So it's a form of knowing yourself, but you see how you fit within the realm, how you are a unit in a common unity, and how you fit in to that unity, and also your ability to transcend it when it's time. Because even though you appear to be transcending the collective, you're actually becoming one with the all in which the collective emerges from. This is why it's good to have a good name and let your name go forth so that you will be remembered and that your descendants will call upon your name, understanding that you reach the state of being balanced and living in harmony. It was called Makaru, being true of voice. One of the ways in which we become true of voice is not only just doing what we say we do, but understand the power of our words and our ability to manifest. So to use the proper words for things to happen, we have spells and incantations, which you write some of these things down. And when you write things down, it causes things to manifest. Bobby Hemmitt did a lecture on writing things down in order for these things to manifest, because this is part of the magic. In ancient Kemet, they used papyrus, right? And even they used stones in a way that was so advanced that your modern Egyptologists can't even explain how it was done. That's how much in harmony the ancient ones were in the Nile Valley, and also how your African ancestors in West Africa were able to develop such an advanced divinization system and be able to use these patterns to summon forces of nature to get them to work in their favor. Now you're here to experience duality, but eventually transcend duality. You come to earth, you experience hot, cold, you experience wet and dry, right? And a lot of times when you go through extremes, that's hell. You can be cold as hell, you can be hot as hell. But when you come into harmony, this is when there's balance and understanding that it's a flow, okay? It's a flow. So what I want you to do is I want you to sit up straight. You gotta sit up straight. You gotta breathe in through the nose. Breathe out through the mouth. You breathe in, you make your stomach come out like a pot belly, filling your stomach up, then breathing out. Good. Now you're going to see this or feel this energy coming up your back as you're breathing in. You're breathing out. Now the energy is coming down. And the energy is circulating. Energy is coming down. You're doing two things. You're expanding your auric field, and you're gaining mastery of your mind. How? Do this silently. How? Not by necessarily stopping your thoughts, but ignoring your thoughts. To be centered, sometimes it's good to ignore your thoughts and don't judge the thoughts. Observe them and let them go. A lot of times we get trapped within these thoughts. Breathe and allow the thoughts to flow. And at the same time, you're opening up your consciousness, getting into a state of relaxation. And this is when you can visualize the possibilities that you want to see manifest in your life. And then you're clear and you're in line, and you're not allowing all these intrusive thoughts become a burden that will cause you to manifest other than what you desire. So it deals with the sacred breath, constantly breathing, sniffing the air. Every religion talks about how the divine created humans and breathed life into these images or these clay figures. You'll even find that in the ancient American Bible called the Popol Vuh, right? Which was written by the Mayans, where it speaks about breath, the divine breath. You find this in the Kemetic tradition, where it talks about the book of breathings. So the breath, it goes back to the spirit and how to be in harmony with your personal spirit, learning how to breathe, not breathing from the chest, but breathing from the diaphragm and going into trance states as you look at what the things it is that you want, and then you feel. This is when you're dealing with Osset, and this is when you're dealing with Heteru, and you're working with the imagination, and this is when you're able to get the will, Haru, to be in alignment with what it is that you desire to see manifest in your life. And therefore, since it has been activated within your life force, you become like Ultra Instinct Goku, and you automatically do these things without limitations. This is one of the highest forms that one can reach in martial arts. If you remember that movie, The Last Dragon, right? With Bruce Leroy and his master, or that is his teacher, right? Was shooting the arrows, and he shot the red arrow, and Bruce Leroy accidentally, no, he didn't even accidentally caught it, he just caught it. And it's the first time he ever just caught that arrow. His master said, "How did you know that was the red arrow?" He said, "I don't know. I didn't know." He stripped the belt from him. He goes down because he thought he did something wrong. He says, "No, man, I'm no longer your master. You reached the ultimate. You knew without knowing. In other words, your mind was not in the way for you to automatically know to grab that arrow being shot at you." A lot of times we do it, but we just may not be conscious of it. There's been reports about how a child was under the car, and the woman who was the mother of the child didn't think. She picked the car up and tossed the car to the side and saved her baby. That's what I'm talking about. When the spirit completely takes over, this is the power that you have. But because we have allowed ourselves to be conditioned, we think we are less than what we actually are. And therefore, we have limitations that are artificial. You see, it's not that you only use 10% of your brain capacity. You're using all of it. It's just that you tricked yourself into believing that you only use 10% of your brain capacity. And that is how powerful you are. You're so powerful that you have limited yourself. And that's what we have done. And we have made the agreement to go through these limitations. But the beauty of that is that you also can make discoveries, okay? By, let's say, if you wanted a challenge in a video game, you choose the level of difficulty that you want to play the game. Well, that's what we've done. We chose the level of difficulty so we can show and prove our greatness and be that God with that story of our triumph over this material plane, and our triumph over the demiurge, and our triumph over all those things that are self-imposed and the things that we agreed to be imposed on us, and the times that we may have read the large print and ignored the fine print and signed the contract to limit us. You see, everything around you, the reason why you're here and seeing these things is based on an agreement. And even though you may not like the options, it's still an agreement. Even if you're in a situation where you're in a prison or you're being captured and everybody got a gun on you in case you try to escape, you can either take the option of saying, "Okay, well, I'll escape later," or you can try to go against them and get shot. It's up to you. But the thing about it, it's all about choices. Some choices, you have more favorable results. So you're here to learn how to make choices. This is where ESHU comes into play. This is where LIBATIONS comes into play, because they present these choices and options. And therefore, you're constantly talking to the keeper, the gatekeeper of the universe, and asking him to show you the way. So what they may do with Levi, they may do with ESHU, is they may take some coin to the crossroads. The crossroads represent the beginning where all things manifested and spread out and connected, because you yourself are supposed to expand. However, instead of us doing this, we're doing this. You see what I mean? Since you are no longer in the center of the circle, you get caught up in the circle and you get caught up in the loop. Buddhism, they call it the samsara, the cycle of birth and death. You see? So, yes, what part of the circle are you going to play the game? Are you going to be in the center, or are you going to be in the periphery? Are you going to constantly be going through the loop of repetitive cycles? Or are you going to transcend? So, therefore, you look at the word spirit, it also seems to contain the word spire and spiral, because you want to go like this. You don't want to just do this. Okay, you want to do this. You want to expand as you evolve. Then you take off. You see? So, yes, each and every one of us are here to experience the divine. The ancient Cometians had an understanding of the four elements known as fire, earth, air, and water, as well as what their qualities were, forever fluctuating, expanding, and contracting, which is why it's good for us to understand how to rise above the base sense faculties in which keeping us enslaved. Therefore, we want to activate the higher sense faculties. The method is not to see the body as a curse, but to transmute our body temple as the vehicle for divine expression. And that is how we elevate beyond the limitations of our senses. The Cometians honored the body temple as much as we see those who are artists who may draw the body and understand the beauty of it. They honored it so much that upon death, it was still considered a living thing and useful in the form of mummification. We still do this in a lot of African traditions today, right? And not only did the Cometians mummify the ancestors who they saw as having made contributions, you see this in the Native American traditions as well. And in the ancient Americas, they also did this, right? They still do mummification in the Congo. So why? Because the DNA still holds the memory of that ancestor, which can be tapped into. So the rituals were done to attract the spirit of this person by awakening the memory within that DNA of that person, which still reflects upon the holographic nature of this universe. So therefore, people see a spirit. Yes, you can see the spirit of people who have long gone, because you're tapping into the cosmic memory of the universe. And it's something that they've been hiding from you for a long time. You can travel between realms and dimensions. The CIA even have what you call Project Gateway. Look it up. They've understand how you can transfer, leave this body and go to other realms. They've been studying this. They didn't study voodoo or voodoo in Africa. They didn't look at your Orishas. They've analyzed all these things. And guess what? They're utilizing a lot of your knowledge against you. You see, when you understand what it is that this world is, and you connect with your ancestors, which are within you, and restore your memory, this is when you get to the point that you can no longer be deceived by the lies in which you've been told ever since you were a child. To truly love a person, right, you must fall in love with yourself, because each and every one of us are a reflection of the universal one, which is the universal all. A marriage to the yin and yang principle within each and every one of us and each and every being. This is love. It's beyond lust, and it is unconditional, which would be called agape. Now we take it back to ancient Kemet, right? And we see that the word for love is myrrh, which represents the plow. The plow is something used to cultivate the land. One of the words for ancient Kemet was Tameri, which means the cultivated land, the loved land, the beloved land. So the pyramids were called Merkut or Mer. Once again, it contains that word Mer, meaning to love, to cultivate, and everything else. And you spell it backwards, you get Rem. And the people were called the Remachu or the Remech, the Rem. Rem are the tears of Ra. Each and every one of us, the human beings, are considered the tears of Ra. The ancient Egyptians considered themselves to be the tears of Ra. The Nubians were considered to be the seed of Ra. You are the tears and the seed of Ra. Activate that solarized power within you with your memory alone. And then align yourself. Forgive yourself. and understand that you've gone through these things because it was part of the adventure in which you're writing your own story. Forgive yourself. One of the reasons why you appear to be cursed is because you hold yourself in a negative light. You have not forgiven yourself for mistakes that you've made, but you needed to make these mistakes in order for you to learn. And even if you think that there is no forgiveness of self, do what you can to alleviate yourself by looking at your life and saying, you know what, that was a process that I was going through then. I'm not that person now. This is the alchemy. Because remember, you are not the person. You're the spirit, which is not limited to time and space, which is why you have deja vu, which is why you have out-of-body experiences. Next time you find yourself not being able to move, going through sleep paralysis, only after you've purified your auric field and your astral body, because you don't want nothing jumping on you, then once you have gone through that purification process, all right, from time to time, it's good for you to take a salt bath to get negative entities off of you, take a spearmint bath to get negative entities off of you, right? Be around positive people. Next time you have that state where you find yourself going to sleep paralysis, allow yourself to completely go to sleep and leave your body, because you're not going to be able to move your body, because that's not the body that's awake. It's the astral body. You can let your physical body go to sleep so that therefore you can operate from your astral body, you see. So it's the limitations in which we put on ourselves that has been keeping us in this loop. Transcend in the trance. We can beautify and cultivate the land. We create a balance and environment that we live in with the food, right, that we eat, the music we listen to, how we interact with our family and the community. We need to have a strong family. The rascals in power have taught you to throw that away. How are you going to have a strong community or a strong community if you have a weak family? And that's what they've wanted you to do, is to disregard and throw your elders away. Hell, cut your own body parts off and throw them away. From time since you were young all the way up until now, they bombarded with you information that constantly keep you mad, upset, and depressed. That is how they siphon off your energy. They want you to be mad and upset and oppressed, or feel oppressed and stressed. They don't want you to discover who you are. They want you to watch the news and see only negative things in the world without looking at the inner beauty in which you can actually create a better world. It starts with creating the world within yourself, and that's how you begin to create a better world where we are loving towards our plants. They flourish. When you love your children, they flourish. This is the Yemoja principle, Yemoja, the mother of fish. She also represents the mother. She represents the principle of caring. If you don't care, then things wither away and die. If you don't care about yourself, you're going to wither away and die. You see, here's the thing. The reason why these people stay in power and continue to do the things they do is because they care about what they're doing. If you don't care about what you're doing, if you half-ass care about anything, then it's going to half-ass manifest. You see what I mean? If you're going to set up a shrine and work with Orishas and everything else, you got to take care of those shrines, because the more you care about them, the stronger they get as influences in your life, and you can actually develop the abilities of these Orishas, because you become ultimately what you worship. When you look at the image of Christ and everything else, whatever you consider it to be, right? It's a symbol of something that can be defined, because what they were trying to say, which I believe that they end up misconstruing after a while, is that the divine is beyond form. So therefore, the divine takes on a life form for us to have an understanding. This is why Olodumare also says that you know me through my Orishas. You see? So you understand the form. Look at the form around you. Look at the world around you. And if you want to see God, look in the mirror and be the living image of the divine. Allow yourself to be the vehicle in which the divine expresses itself through. By the way, family, when it comes to tapping into your melanin, eat green things. When it comes to tapping into your melanin, get some breath of fresh air. Connect with nature. If you want to deal with the spirits of water, well, go by a river. You want to deal with spirits of elevation? Go on top of a mountain. You want to go with the spirits of health? Go into a wooded area. Everywhere you go in these places, you connect with the spirits of these places. This is where all these entities thrive. They represent different frequencies. Some people are oriented to be forest people. Some people are oriented to be mountain people. I just wanted to share that with you before we go. I know I've gone way beyond the time limit, but I wanted to say, if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up. You know, um, I will be talking more about these things, family. You know, there's so much that I'd like to share with you. If you're interested in a reading, if you would like to know who your Orishas are in this incarnation, feel free to hit me up. I can be reached at Khepra.Ptah@gmail.com, or hit me up on my other YouTube channel, which is Ptah360, also known as Ancient Wisdom Keeper. All right, family. Thanks for listening. Peace.